Real estate alternate vocabulary by subject. Subject, legal. Net income. Income after expenses, also called net operating income. Diminishing returns. Law that says beyond a certain point, the added value of an additional feature, addition, repair, etc. is less than the actual cost of the item. Also called law of decreasing returns. Supply and demand. Law of economics that says for all products, goods and services, when supply exceeds demand, prices will fall, and when demand exceeds supply, prices will rise. Commingling. Illegally mixing personal or business funds with money held in trust on behalf of a client. Community property. In some states, property acquired during marriage that is owned jointly by the married couple. Reconveyance. Instrument that releases security property from the lien created by a deed of trust. Equivalent of satisfaction of mortgage. Real property. The interests, benefits, and rights inherent in the ownership of real estate. State action. In constitutional law, action by a government, federal, state, or local, rather than by a private party. Ledger boards. Horizontal studs that are nailed to the tall studs to provide support for the floor and roof joists in balloon framing. Dower rights. In some states, the interest held by a married person in the real property his or her spouse owns in fee simple during their marriage. At common law, dower referred only to the wife's interest in her husband's property, while the husband's interest in his wife's property was called courtesy. Now dower refers to either spouse's interest in the other's property. Question of fact. In a lawsuit, a question about what actually occurred, as opposed to a question about the legal consequences of what occurred. A question of law. Question of law. In a lawsuit, a question about what the law is on a particular point, what the legal rights and duties of the parties were. Deposition. In a lawsuit, the formal, out-of-court testimony of a witness or a party, taken before the trial, used as part of discovery process, to determine facts of a case, or if witness is not able to attend trial. A transcript of a deposition can be introduced as evidence in the trial. Amortization provision. In a zoning law, a provision that places time limits on non-conforming uses, not permitted in some states. Appellee. In an appeal, the party who did not file the appeal, also called the respondent. Bona fide. In good faith, genuine. Separate property. In states with a community property system, any property owned by a married person that is not held jointly with the spouse is community property. Inherit. In strict legal usage, to acquire property by intestate succession, but commonly used to mean acquiring property either by intestate succession or by will. Monthly income. Income received on a monthly basis. Stable income. Income that can reasonably be expected to continue in the future. Stable monthly income. Income that can reasonably be expected to continue in the future. IAC. Indoor air quality, a measure of the purity and filtration of air in a home, taking into account the amount of fresh air and circulation rate. IAC. Indoor air quality, a measure of the purity and filtration of air in a home, taking into account the amount of fresh air and circulation rate. General data, information that covers the forces that affect a property's value, but are not directly related to a particular piece of property. General data covers economic, governmental, social and physical factors, and can be local or national. Specific data, information that is relevant to the subject property itself. Two types of specific data are subject property data and comparative purpose data. See each of these. Teaser rates, initial interest rates that are much lower than the normal adjustable interest rate would be, with the rate usually returning to the normal interest rate at the first adjustment. Mortgage companies, a term used to describe institutions that function either as intermediaries between borrowers and lenders. Mortgage broker, or as lenders, mortgage lender. Savings and loan associations, institutions that specialize in taking savings deposits and making mortgage loans. Insurance companies, institutions with large sums of stable, long-term investment capital, looking for high-return investments, such as long-term commercial real estate projects. Investors in secondary mortgage markets. Securities, instruments that pledge assets as security for a debt, e.g. mortgages and trust deeds, or documents that serve as evidence of ownership, e.g. stocks and bonds. Mortgage insurance, insurance offered by private companies, PMI, or the government through FHA, MIP, to insure a lender against default on a loan by a borrower. Title insurance, insurance policy that protects lenders and homeowners against losses resulting from undiscovered title defects and encumbrances. Nuisance, interference with the right of quiet enjoyment of property. Speculation, investing, or optioning, with the anticipation that something will go up in value. Interest-yielding investments, investments that pay interest, or other dividends, as a form of income to the holder or bearer. This may be counted as stable monthly income if the payments are consistent and do not deplete the principal amount of the investment. Assets. Items of value usually refers to items owned by the borrower. Constructive notice. Knowledge of a fact imputed to a person by law. A person is held to have constructive notice of something when he or she should have known it, even if he or she did not know it. Everyone is held to have constructive notice of the contents of recorded documents, since everyone is expected to protect their interests by searching the public record. Ratification. Later confirmation or approval of an act not authorized when it was performed. Subsequent good faith purchasers. Later grantees of a deed who actually paid consideration for it. As such, they are given some protection from claims not recorded. Constitutional law. Law derived from the Constitution. Statutory law. Laws adopted by a legislative body, Congress, state legislature, or a county or city council, as opposed to constitutional law, case law, or administrative regulations. Revenue-generating laws. Laws enacted by government consisting of taxation and specific tax policies. Right to regulate laws. Laws enacted by governments dealing with the police power that governments reserve for themselves. Truster. In a trust deed, the borrower. Compound interest. Interest calculated as a percentage of both the principal amount and accumulated unpaid interest. Simple interest. Interest calculated as a percentage of the principal only. Law of diminishing returns. Law that says beyond a certain point, the added value of an additional feature, addition, repair, etc. is less than the actual cost of the item. Also called law of decreasing returns. Increasing returns. Law that says that the added value of an additional feature, addition, repair, etc. is more than the actual cost of the item. Law of increasing returns. Law that says that the added value of an additional feature, addition, repair, etc. is more than the actual cost of the item. Tenancy. Lawful possession of real property, an estate,